And Meredith, you of course became notable in part because of your whistleblowing within Google around the ways that the technology was being used. Of course, you know, and how their business incentives sort of dominated over moral and ethical concerns. Now, in this era of generative AI, they talk about being bold and responsible. And of course, they have been a little bit on the back foot, you know, a little bit beat to the market by both OpenAI and Microsoft. How do you see their approach to ethics and morals versus the business balance these days?
Yeah, well, I did do labor organizing at Google, and that was one of the few things that actually checked some of these impulses. So I think, you know, we can talk about business model, we can also talk about capitalism, right? The engines of these companies are driven by a need, a requirement to report revenue and growth increases every quarter forever. That's the definition of metastasis, and it is obviously not healthy for the social benefit. So I think, you know, we do need those structural checks. I think, you know, how is Google doing? Look, you remember Web3? Right?
Vaguely.
Like, you know, this was a hype cycle. Everyone was predicting, you know, massive numbers. This is going to change the entire environment. And then, you know, no one's talking about it. Andreessen Horowitz has even moved off it. They're, you know, black holing their optimistic manifestos. I think generative AI is very similar. I don't think AI in general is similar. I think they're going to continue to create these large-scale models that involve data and compute. But generative AI is not actually that useful. What happened in January was that technology, or sort of a framework for building models that had been developed in 2017, was sort of put online with an interface by Microsoft/OpenAI, who have to be understood as the same entity, right? And the ChatGPT interface kind of gave people a simulated experience of like, oh my God, I'm talking to kind of a human. It's spitting out nonsense, but it's spitting it out, and this feels kind of sentient, right? And on the backs of this advertisement for their GPT API, which they sell through their Azure cloud services, they sort of generated an entire new hyped narrative around generative AI as this sort of future-facing technology that's going to change every industry. But what does it do, right? It, you know, it presents visual images that are often, you know, stolen from artists or like far too close for comfort, and it presents plausible text, right? It infers what's the sort of plausible response to a prompt based on, you know, mountains of data from the internet, the Reddits, the 4chans, you know, the Stormfront is in there, as Natasha's work has shown, you know, and kind of presents text that looks plausible but has no relationship to facts, has no relationship to reality, has no citations, right? So what is this useful for? It's not useful in most serious contexts. Yeah, you could replace a junior copywriter, but you better have a senior copywriter who's checking that text because it's going to be janky. So I think we need to be like really clear about what are we actually responding to. We're responding to an advertisement, a very expensive advertisement, ChatGPT, that was put online as an interface that allowed us to have a sort of simulated experience with a bot that we're now sort of making all kinds of predictions on that I don't think are actually grounded in any understanding of the utility of these systems. And again, you know, Silicon Valley runs on VC hype. VCs require hype to get a return on investment because they need an IPO or an acquisition, and that's how you get rich. You don't get rich by the technology working. You get rich by people believing it works long enough that one of those two things gets you some money. So we're seeing another one of those.